How's everybody? We want to remind our voters that today is the last day to vote in Harris County and actually across the nation. And we're out riding around, checking on our election judges, presiding judges, and AJs and clerks to make sure things are going as we've planned for them to go. We've seen that there are a few issues that are occurring at some of the polling locations with our voting machines. Some of it has to do with the manner in which it was set up. Some of it has to do with perhaps the printer is not doing what it's supposed to do. So of course, we'll be working with our vendor as it relates to assessing our equipment and ensuring that it's doing what we've programmed it to do. But the good news is our voters are voting. I just was informed that we voted at least 120,000 today as of noontime. And we'd like to remind our voters that the polls are open until 7 p.m. tonight. There's 782 locations. So if you get to one particular location and the line seems to be longer than you care to endure, you can go to harrisvotes.com and look up the next closest polling location to that address where you happen to be. As you can see here at West Gray, there's a line to the corner of the building, and it's roughly a 10-minute wait. So while it looks like a long line, the voters are actually processing themselves. The clerks are processing the voters in a relatively 10,000 people in a relatively efficient manner. We understand that this location had some setup issues at the very beginning of the day, and we talked to the judge about what those issues were. And we're glad to hear that they weren't machine-related issues, but it was the manner in which the machines were shut down from the early voting, which required her to do this additional step to set those machines up to match them to the controller, and that was just a time-consuming process. And we can share some more particular details with you later in the process as we're doing our post-election assessment to the judge, to the court, and to our election commission. But that's what we're seeing. As the judges are working through the setup process, we're seeing that it's taking them some extra steps that they initially wasn't prepared to do. So once they've identified what those steps are, they take those steps and we get the machines working as they're supposed to work. There's a location at Baker Ripley, where the judge had a mishap with the supply box and the key to the machines, which then delayed the opening of that location. We sent technicians and supplies out to that location to help the judge set up. We then discovered that some of the clerks who were assigned to that locations decided not to work today. So the judge and the AJ, the PJ and the AJ were there by themselves. We've sent clerks and additional resources to that location to assist the judges in continuing voting at that location. But the good news is there that while voters are there waiting, there were other locations within the vicinity that they could have driven themselves to. But the long and the short is we have to control the things that we can, which means we need to control our supplies a little better. We need to control our access a little better. And those are things that we'll assess post-election to make sure we get it right the next time for the first time for the opening of the day.
Talk to us a little bit. You mentioned Baker Ripley. It seems like there was a key or something that wasn't there in time. Talk to us about some of the issues that voters are facing this morning along with that. It seems like it's simple things. You mentioned supply issues or...
So it wasn't a supply issue in that the supplies weren't provided. There was a misdelivery of the box. So there's a whole story behind this particular location and the assignment of the judges that I'm not prepared to go into today. But the long and the short is, if we follow our processes and procedures, then things go as they're supposed to go. And in this particular scenario, it doesn't appear that we followed our processes and procedures. And when I say we, I mean the collective, not just the election administrator's office, but everyone involved. So those are things that we'll identify and that we'll address moving forward. But as it relates to voters through the rest of the city and the county, we were just over at Trinity, and Trinity is running without issue. And so it's not that we're seeing a lack of training. It's not that we're seeing a lack of machines operating properly. It's just mishaps. The setup doesn't go as it should go, which cascades into voters standing in line a little longer than we might want them to stand in line. So it's those sort of things that we'll address and make sure that we iron out the kinks. And when we add on top of that, we have 782 locations we have citizen presiding judges, our neighbors and our friends, who do this maybe twice a year. So there's a little jitter. There's a few jitters as we start early morning, 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m. So we have to just work through those a little better and provide as many and as much of the resources as we can to help them through this task. It's a daunting task. 782 locations. They're doing what they can. We're doing what we can to support them. At the end of the day, everyone that wants to cast a ballot will be able to cast a ballot, and we'll count them correctly.
Sir, do we know how many locations had these issues, and do we know if any voters got turned away?
So I don't know. I don't have a full accounting of how many locations actually had this type of issue, but we will determine that in our post-assessment of the elections process. Voters themselves, the judges did not turn voters away, but obviously if a voter feels like they're standing in line too long, the judge may say there's another location you can go to. Some may take that as a turnaway. Others may say they're being redirected, and other voters may decide to remove themselves. And we certainly understand that. No one wants to stand in line for hours, and we get that. So we encourage voters, if they're standing in line for what feels like too long of a period of time, that they can go to harrisvotes.com and look up the next closest polling location. We're asking all of our judges to update the wait times on the locations. All of our judges have been assigned with student workers who are there to do just that, to update the poll book to show what the wait times are. Some of our students weren't able to work today, but exactly at this location, the judge is being very diligent to ensure that she's updating her wait times so that the voters know exactly what they're encountering at any particular location.
The 700 asked about those wait times on harrisvotes.com. Over here I'm hearing voters talk about anywhere between 45 minutes to 90 minutes to 2-hour waits. That's not reflected on the website. Other colleagues of mine have noticed wait times longer at polling sites than reflected on website. How reliable is the website, harrisvotes.com, when it comes to wait times?
The website is reliable. What we need to do is ensure that the judges are updating their poll pad as they should update their poll pad. And so part of what you see there is if the judge is in a situation where they're interacting with the voters and they're not at their station to update the website. So it's not that the website's not working, it's that the judge is busy and can't actually get to the website, get to the poll pad to update the wait time. So I think the voters should rely on the website, and we're communicating to our judges to make sure that you're updating the website as frequently as you can. I think there was yes, ma'am, another question?
I just wondered, out of the 782 locations, could we say kind of ballpark how many of them have had issues today? Is it like a small percentage?
Yeah, how many machines have gone down today?
So I wouldn't speculate to the percentage, just because I haven't done that assessment. Now, someone on my team, I'm sure, is doing that assessment, and I hope to be able to speak to that at a later point in time, but I'm not prepared to speak to that now.
Any issues with poll watchers and intimidation at the polls or anything like that?
So thank you for that question. We have not received any reports of any voter intimidation or coercion at the polling places, and we'd like to keep it that way. As we've said to our residents, election workers are our neighbors and our friends. They sign up to do this job. It's a daunting job, and coercing or intimidating election workers doesn't solve anyone's problems. And even as it relates to the different campaigns, we can agree and disagree on who should be the elected official, but intimidation and coercion is never the answer to that. So luckily and hopefully we'll see no intimidation or coercion at our polling locations. And I would like to remind our voters that we do have a law task force in place, and they are prepared to respond in the appropriate manner to any situations that arise at any one of our 782 polling locations. So we ask everyone to keep the peace and to let the voters vote. And as the voters vote, we'll tabulate the votes, and the elected official with the most votes will win the contest.
Well, can you share about the DOJ federal monitors here? What are they here to do exactly? Were they at your request, or?
So, as I understand it, a number of our elected officials submitted written requests to the DOJ to submit monitors. We understand that monitors are here on the ground. They're going around from polling place to polling place, and they're assessing operations at the polling place, and they're making sure that our workers are doing what needs to be done. We're in favor of monitors. As you know, the Secretary of State has monitors on the ground as well, and inspectors. And what we know from monitors is that they give us feedback, and the feedback helps us improve the process. So we've already received some feedback from the Secretary of State's monitors. We've received some feedback from the Secretary of State's trainers, and it's welcome feedback. And we anticipate that we'll receive feedback from the DOJ monitors, and we'll use that feedback to make our process that much better.
What type of feedback?
We've got time for one more question, and then we've got to head out.
Well, just from the simplest matter is the polling locations didn't post their signs. The polling locations didn't have their 150 foot mark placed in the right direction. The ADA setup didn't seem to be right as it relates to curbside. So just those sort of little things makes a world of difference for voters. So nothing major in that we're not following the law. It's just little tweaks that ensure that we are providing the voters with the best experience.
If I can, real quick, you mentioned clerk workers didn't show up at Baker. You mentioned interns or college students, rather, didn't show up here. Are you worried about that maybe today and moving future elections, that enough people won't be volunteering for elections or just not showing up?
So we plan for this kind of thing, right? So I can tell you that we recruited reserve workers to go out to replace judges, presiding judges and administrative and the alternate judges that might not be able to show up. And so we had reserves in place, and we actually had to place some presiding judges and some alternate judges for judges that weren't able to show up for a sundry of reasons. And we had additional clerks in play. But when you see a large number of people that don't show up for work, then once we deplete our reserves, then we do what we just did, which was reach out to the parties, to both the Democrats and the Republicans, and say, hey, we've had some judges that have some clerks that have not shown up. Can you send us some more reserves? And both parties responded by sending clerks. So that's what we're doing. We're collaborating, we're communicating, we're working together as a team, because at the end of the day, both parties and the election administrator wants people to vote. So that's what we're working towards. Okay. Thank you all.